Okay, let me see. I got we might do a screen share. Let me see here. Okay, good. Okay. Brendan, how are you this evening?
Hi, Lance. I'm fine. How are you?
Hey, Brendan, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Well, thank you all for coming in and joining us. So this is our last session of this 9 yana session that we've been talking about. And that next week, August 1st, we will start with the story of the life story of the Buddha. So that should be very good. And we'll continue on with our fundamentals. So there's Michael. Michael, we thought you were on vacation.
Ignore the little man behind this mantra.
Hey, Michael.
Okay. He told them at work that he was on vacation.
Yeah, I'm not away, but I am on vacation.
All right. Well, very good. Good for you.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll get started. I'll start with the opening prayers. So if you have your prayer book or a reasonable facsimile thereof, you can follow us. Keep your microphone muted so we don't feed back, but please recite these prayers out loud. And we start with the altruistic motivation. All mothers, sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mothers, sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Dagla dang wa je pe dra no pa je pe ge tar pa dang tam she ken pe bar du jo par je pa tam she ki so je pe manam kadam yam pe sem chen tam she de wa dang den Dog now dang drel nor du la na me pa yang dag pa zog pe zhang ju brin po she do pa ja. Action bodhicitta prayer. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Deshe du sang ma ge gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Ma she bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Du de ring ne sung te ni ma sang ta sam gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities and the mandalas of the yadams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakinis, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities and the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Drenchen Sawa Dangur Parje Pe Pao Den Lama Dampa Namla Kapsu Chio Yidam Kil Gorgi La Sok Namla Kapsu Chio Sange Chom Dende Namla Kapsu Chio Dampe Cho Namla Kapsu Chio Pape Gedu Namla Kapsu Chio Pawo Kajo Cho Kyung Song Me Song Yeshe Gi Chang Dang Dempa Namla Kapsu Chio. Taking the Bodhisattva vow. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Changchu Ningpo Chiki Bar Sangye Namla Kapsu Chi Chodang Shangshu Sampayi Soklang Deshin Kapsu Chi Jitar Nongi Deshegi Shangshu Tugne Ke Padang Shangshu Sampe La Pala De Dagrim Shin E Patar De Shin Drola Pandandu Shangshu Samni Ke Gishin De Shin Du Ni La Pala Rinpa Shindu La Pajio. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Chodang Soki Chonam La Shangshu Badu Dagni Kapsu Chi Dagi Jin Soki Pe Sonam Gi Drola Penshir Sangye Jupasho. The four vast immeasurables. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yam pe sam chantam she dewa dang dewe gurdang dempar jorchi. Dug now dang do now gi gu dang drawa jorchi. Dugnao me pe dewa dung midra wa jurchi. Ne ring chak dong ni dong dra wei tang namla ne pa jurchi. Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions or anything you want to talk about regarding the last sessions that we've had, or something else that you have been wanting to talk about that we haven't mentioned yet?
Lance, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I'm very eager when I can to be able to get to the temple for the meditation practice. But one thing I've noticed in the videos is that some of the people at the temple are sitting facing one another towards the front. And then there's another group of a larger group of people back that are sitting horizontally in rows. What is the significance of that as to who sits where, please?
Well, the whole shrine room, is a big room. It's about 50 feet long, and about the first third of it is what we would call the actual shrine room, and then that which is the 2/3, the larger space there, is the kind of like the audience, who is kind of facing the front of the altar, facing the front of the room. So generally speaking, the lamas, the monastics, the higher level people would be seated up towards the front of the altar in that first third there. And then the people who are coming in, the lay people and so on, will be sitting in that audience part facing the altar and so on. So generally that's what it is. We're at Dharmasuriya, we're quite loose with that. So there's usually plenty of room for those who want to sit up closer and can see and hear a little bit better. But we encourage everybody to sit up close, even if they're towards the back. We encourage them to come up towards the front.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Hartley, did you have a question, or I saw you a little bit waving there now? Okay. All right. Well, then, very good. All right. So just to kind of bring us as a quick review, we've been talking about the 9 yanas. The word yana is a Sanskrit word that in English translates as a vehicle, conveyance, a means of how it is that we get from one place where we are to where we want to be. And in this case, where we are is our ground, and where we're trying to get to be is to Buddhahood. And there's a pathway that we need to follow to get to that result, to get to that Buddhahood. So we talk about the ground, we talk about the path, and we talk about the result or the fruition. So the yana is the way in which we are doing it, is the vehicle that we are traveling in to get to from the ground along the path to the Buddhahood. And there are these 9 yanas that are being expressed here that are increasing in their degree of detail and commitment to practice, commitment to maybe some scripture, maybe some yogic practices and so on like that. So any one of these by itself can take us to Buddhahood, depending on our karma and our devotion. Any one of them can take us there. But for those of us who are developing our connection points, developing our karma for this, we need to go through this gradual path of these 9 yanas to get there. In different traditions and different lineages, there may be a 4 pathway, there may be a 9 pathway, there may be a 1 pathway, depending on the particular group that you are associating yourself with. And you have certainly the freedom to partake of any of these and to change if you find that one is not satisfying your your aspirations for any particular reason, you can change to another lineage, and that's perfectly fine. And you'll find that they all, come together at the same place, and they're all talking about the same thing, and they're all using many of the same prayers and practices. So it just might be a matter of degree what the approach is that differentiates these. So we talked about the Hinayana. The Hinayana is the fundamental pathway of discipline, of being able to bring our body, speech, and mind together in one-pointed mindfulness, to be able to focus on our goal of Buddhahood. And then the next one is the Mahayana. The Mahayana is the middle way, the great vehicle. And the middle way is concentrating, looking more at being able to help other beings. The Hinayana is for our own personal Buddhahood. And in Mahayana, we're looking at helping other beings attain Buddhahood. And through that, we're helping ourselves to attain Buddhahood. So our motivation becomes for the benefit of others in the Mahayana. And we're introduced to the Bodhisattvas, the hero of the Mahayana. In the Hinayana, the hero would be the Arhat, would be the Shravaka, the hearer, the one who goes off by himself and develops his own practice and so on, with the guidance of his master and so on. But it is more solitary. And the Hinayana and the Mahayana is done more as a sangha, more as a group and so on. But there are periods where we would go off into individual retreat to work on our practices and so on, but always with the goal of doing this for the benefit of the enlightenment of other beings. Then the next one is the Vajrayana. The Vajrayana is the Tibetan Buddhism, but there's many, but that Vajrayana is practiced in many other places besides Tibet, but in Tibet it really flourished. And this is the wisdom path. This is the path of being able to recognize oneself as a Buddha, and to be able to recognize that we need some work. We need to be able to purify, because there's many obstacles that are in the way of our being a perfect Buddha. So in the Vajrayana, we're learning what all those purifications are and so on, and we're practicing deity yoga, which is the becoming in union with the different Buddha deities, the bodhisattvas and so on. So we practice that. Sometimes it's called the mantrayana. The mantra is the speech of the deity, the speech of the Buddha, these mantras that we recite and so on. And these are tools to help us to align ourselves, to help us purify ourselves, to help us to recognize what it is to be those deities, those Buddhas and bodhisattvas that are all within ourselves. And what we're trying to do is remove the blockages so that these become self-rising. They rise on their own and so on. And we begin to recognize ourselves as these deities. So we call this is the wisdom path, because we are developing a great deal of knowledge and understanding of some of the finer points of the Buddhist philosophy and so on. We're also working on the method and the way in which we do this. So the wisdom and the method go together. It's like two sides of the same hand. And then, so those three, the Hinayana, the Mahayana, and the Vajrayana, are the main way in which we look at this, that we talk about these three paths. But in the older tradition, in the original tradition of Tibet, there are 9 paths, and that's where we've talked about the path of renunciation, the path of purification, the path of transformation, and the path of self-liberation. So the path of renunciation had the path of the discipline in it, and it introduced the Mahayana path, the middle way path, and then the path of purification was the yoga tantra path, the Kriya tantra path, and the Choya path, which are both very steeped in philosophy. Then the path of transformation, then we got into the yoga tantra, and we start looking at the deity yoga. We start exploring that, having experience with that, and so on. Last time we talked about the Mahayoga path, and the Mahayoga we talked about the 8 great bodhisattvas, and we talked about the 5 Buddha families. So that was an introduction to that. It certainly gets more detail, and it's not necessarily detailed, but for those of us who have an aspiration to want to look at all these finer points, it's there for us. It's very well elucidated in the text and in the practices and so on. So we can have a lot of support for that. And that transformation happens, very powerfully, very passionately, we might say. Then tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the path of Anuyoga and the path of Atiyoga. This is the 8th and the 9th path of these finer points, of these finer paths, and so on. So if anybody has questions, as I always say, don't hesitate to speak right up. Okay. So this Anuyoga path, it's spelled A-N-U, yoga, Y-O-G-A. And this is a path of transformation. And this is the path of what we call completion stage. What we were talking about last time with the Mahayoga and a little bit with the Yoga Tantra, we were talking about the generation path, the generation stage, where we're going through the visualizations, we're going through the mantras, we're going through the causes of becoming a Buddha, the causes of those things that are our obstacles. And so through overcoming our obstacles, we're revealing our true nature, which is the causes of being a Buddha, our natural state, our true nature. So once we become stable in that generation stage, then we come to the part of what's called the completion stage, where we become that deity, and we're able to bring that deity into ourselves and become one with that, to the point that we can let it go, that we are complete with that, and we become we abide within that awareness, and within that awakeness, within that mindfulness, where we become the Buddha. Now, as we begin, we kind of vacillate through this. We're not 100%. To be 100% would be to be a Buddha, but we go through these practices to help us to get to that 100%. So it may take lifetimes for us to get there. It's taken us many lifetimes to get where we are, and there's many more lifetimes that we may have to go through to get there. However, it is possible, and there's many examples of those who were able to attain Buddhahood in their lifetime as a human being. So we aspire for that, and we work towards that. But if we fail at that, if we're not successful in that, we don't despair. We know that there will be another opportunity for us, and we don't look at it that it is our life, our individual life, so much as it is the Tantra. It is the life of the continuum, is the life of all beings and so on. So it's a shared experience of being a human being. All of this, excuse me, is the experience of human beings. So it's important to remember that, not to lose that, that this is a human being experience, and through the completion of this as a human being, will this allow us to transcend being a human being and then going into dimensions that we can only guess about. We don't know. And through our meditations, we may have glimpses of what that might be, but we can't hold on to them. We can't, when we come back into being a human being again, if we're doing our meditation and we have these glimpses and we come back to being an ordinary human being, we can't articulate what that experience is. We can say that, wow, something really changed in my life and I have great love for all beings and I have great compassion for their suffering and I have great joy for life and to be alive and so on. And I see all life, I see all nature as being the same and so on. So these are the vast immeasurable qualities of bodhicitta, of being an enlightened being and so on. So we can see that there are things that happen as a human being that indicate to us that we're on the spiritual path of Buddhahood, that what we call Buddhahood. So as we get closer and closer to that, as that spiral gets closer and closer, and there's less things to have to perfect because so many things have already been successfully done. Now we're getting to these finer points. So this completion stage is reaching, a very, very narrow point of that spiral. So we talk about that this is the absolute stage and the primal wisdom. The absolute stage and the primal wisdom. The primal wisdom is that true nature that we all have within ourselves. And we have glimpses of that, and we may abide in that, we may recognize that, and that becomes our passion, our motivation, that we have this yearning within ourselves that there is this truth, that there is this loving kindness, compassion, etc., that is within us, and we're trying to make that everything that we are, to make our lives everything that is. So that primal wisdom, that primordial wisdom, primal wisdom, is that which is unborn. It's so pure. It's within us, but it's so pure. It hasn't been. It's birthless. It may be within us as a human being, but it's everywhere. It's not just in us. It's everywhere. And part of the realization of this is recognizing that it is everywhere. And that's the absolute stage, is recognizing that the absolute stage is everywhere. And then seeing all this as just appearance of that absolute stage, that this absolute stage can take many, many, many different forms, many different ways and so on. And so we begin to recognize, we have glimpses of that and saying, oh, this is all of that. This is all of that absolute stage. As we're doing that, we're developing this awareness of a multiplicity of all these myriad appearances. And all these forms, all these things and so on are all compounded. They're all relative. They're all phenomenal. We can't explain them, absolutely, because we're not Buddha. But all these things are here for us to be able to enjoy. And we can make sense out of these, we can begin to make a system out of this to be able to help communicate to ourselves what we're doing and to communicate to each other how we can help each other and so on. So these appearances, this multiplicity, is what we call the phenomenal nature. And this phenomenal nature is built up, like I said, of all these aggregates, all these heaps of consciousness, of form, different elements, things we talk about in the 12 links of interdependence or dependent origination. There's several different ways of saying this, but nevertheless, it becomes a system by which we can organize these thoughts and so on, but we see them all as conceptual. And as being conceptual, being compounded, they have no true essence of their own. They don't stand alone. Any one of these things are dependent on other things for us to be able to understand them. And this is part of the human condition. So we look at all this emptiness, we look at all this multiplicity as being empty of its own true nature. And it's temporary. However, as we have these meditative experiences, as we have these glimpses of this Buddhahood, we begin to realize that there is this permanent nature to this. There is this birthlessness because it's not born. It's not unborn. So we go beyond any idea of duality, of dualistic nature. And as a human being, again, that's hard for us to understand. We want to conceptualize that. What does that mean? But to experience it is our true goal, what we're trying to do. And the more that we're able to experience that, the more stable that experience is with us, the more of a complete human being we become, the more completion stage, and see ourselves not as the multiplicity, but we see ourselves as the absolute nature. So in doing this, we have some conceptual things to help us to get to that point, but those conceptual things come together and then just kind of disappear into this absolute nature that is non-conceptual. So these things that come together, and I'm not going to go into any detail with this tonight, but to be able to introduce it to you, because maybe you've read about it or you've heard about it, are the channels, the winds, and the drops. And these are phenomena that are within ourselves, in our body and so on, that are representing this transference between our physicality, our inner wisdom, our inner intellectual, and our spirituality. That these are the forms, these are the elements within our bodies that are helping us to transport us, if you will, to this absolute nature. So it begins with the chakras. So let's put it this way, we've got this center channel that goes through our body from the top of our head down to 4 inches below our navel. And our life force that we've had since the moment we were conceived, this life force is running up and down through this center channel. It runs parallel to our spine, but it's only about the diameter of like a pencil. And within it, this life force is running and so on. And then this life force then intersects with these chakras that we have. And the chakras, there's a chakra at the crown, there's a chakra at the throat, there's a chakra at the heart, there's a chakra at the navel. And there's some other chakras that we can get into, but tonight we're not going to go into that greater detail. But those chakras then from those chakras then go out all these channels. And these channels are going out to our different parts of our body and so on. And this energy is running up and running through these chakras, then going out through these channels, and then the channels then are going to parts of our body and so on. And with it is is this inner wisdom. Then through these channels are these winds. We talk about these winds that are going through, that are blowing these drops. These drops are like these little spheres of matter energy, and the wind, the movement is being blown through there, and these drops then are going through all these different channels, and then coming back and wind up coming back into the center channel. So this is all during our lifetime. And the more we become aware of this, the more we recognize our body, speech, and mind as all being one, and as all being the inseparable with our true nature. When we go, Om Ahom, may my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of the enlightened ones. That's what we're referencing. So all this is all coming together. And then we keep this through our life. And then when we pass, when we die, when our body dies, our physical body dies, it's no longer functioning. It's dissolving into its different component parts and so on. And then it dissolves into just pure energy, into this life force. And this life force has to be ejected out of this dead body now. So we talk about this inner breath. We have this outer breath. And with that outer breath is our brain. And with our brain are all these memories, all these things that we've accumulated, all this knowledge and stuff all these experiences that that were human experience, but they were more like mundane human experiences and so on. So those are gone because the body is dead now. The brain is gone. The brain is dead. Those thoughts are gone and so on. But yet there is still these heart thoughts, because in our life force is in this channel, in this heart center, which now has to be ejected. And we want that to be ejected. That goes to the absolute. And remember, the absolute is everywhere. Our body's the absolute. All this nature is the absolute. And then there is that which is unexplainable, non-conceptual, which is all that this is all part of and so on. So we have to eject that. So we have to learn the proper way to do that. Else that energy, that life force, may wind up in a dangerous place that was not prepared. There was not, and so we wind up having another life, but it may not be the life that you really wanted. It may be because you weren't prepared properly, and you weren't purified properly, and that life force got manifested in a different kind of a form. So we talk a lot about that in other sessions and so on. It's definitely not a Buddhism 101 thing, but we do knock on the door of that a few times, and to let you know that, what we are doing is forming these understandings of our metaphysical, being, temporary as it may be, but there is also that which is absolute. So being able to bring that all together, to have no blockages, to have no obscurations to that realization. So coming back to the Anuyoga now, the Anuyoga is that completion stage of bringing this is all coming together now. And we're doing this, in this life form that we are right now and so on. So this yoga, this absolute stage is sometimes called the following. This Anuyoga means the following, or the subsequent yoga. Yoga means union. So after we go through the Maha Yoga, after we go through that highest yoga tantra, or we gone through all that stuff, now it's coming to the completion stage, which is following all that stuff, the subsequent stuff that is like that. And it's getting very, 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 very subtle, very non-conceptual. You know, it's kind of very permeable the way it's going, you know, and there's many different ways to explain it in physics and so on, and quantum and all this kind of stuff, you know, but we look at it in these spiritual terms. So nevertheless, this stage is like this immediate stage, and it's this non-sequential stage. So what we've been doing up to this time has been this gradual stage. We've been building up, building up, building up, and expanding, and so on like that, eliminating, doing all this stuff of being able to purify our intellectualization of this and purify our heart experience, our heart thoughts of all this and so on, so that we can recognize the heart, these pure heart thoughts of being a Buddha. So now we're in this immediate, direct, non-sequential phase of this completion phase where time disappears. Everything's the same time. Place, location disappears. Everything's the same place. So it gets very, very subtle, very non-conceptual. So I think last time we talked about the 8 parts of meditation, and at the risk of repeating myself, but it's worthy of saying again because it's so important and so powerful, that there's these 8 stages of meditative concentration that we go through. So in the very beginning are these 4 absorptions. And the 4 absorptions, the first stage is we're giving up desire. We're letting go of our ordinary desire, being an ordinary human being. We're giving up unwholesome factors, you know, things that we're attached to, you know, friends, family, our jobs, all, you know, our body, all these kinds of things that an ordinary human being would be consumed with. But meanwhile, we recognize that it doesn't bring you complete happiness. It brings you temporary happiness, but it also brings you a whole lot of suffering along the way. And maybe we make rationalizations that the happinesses that we have, temporary as they are worth the suffering. But we find that as we get along further this path, we say, no, I'm not going to accept that anymore. So the second stage of that is coming to rest of conceptualizations, letting these conceptualizations just rest and not chasing after them, not having to know everything. And these discursive thoughts, trying to analyze all this stuff. Why do we do this? Why do we do that? And so on. And just, it doesn't matter, just letting it go. And then the third stage of these absorptions is a joy that we have, you know, from doing this. We're feeling this joy. Is this joy gets replaced with just an equanimity, this sameness, this balance. So even that joy goes away. But we're alert, we're aware, we're in this meditative mind. We're developing this meditative mind, and we're going through these stages of the 4 immeasurables, the 4 vast qualities of that, you know. So we're developing the mind of being an enlightened being. So then we come to the 4th stage of absorption, and that state of well-being, that fades. And all that's left is equanimity and wakefulness are only present. Equanimity equanimity, seeing all the same and being awake and seeing that all what's the same and recognizing all of this as being that equanimity. So these are the four absorptions, and these are the four lower parts of this meditative concentration. Then we come to the four formlessnesses, which are next, the four higher parts. So with this, we come to, now we recognize space, but we recognize the limitlessness of space. And then through deeper meditation, we come to the sixth stage where there's consciousness. We recognize consciousness and we say there's a limitlessness of consciousness. And then we come to the seventh stage. And then there is nothing whatever. That consciousness then falls away. And then from that, if you think it's at all possible in our conceptual mind, what could be beyond that? Nothing whatever. We come to the eighth stage, which is beyond awareness and beyond non-awareness. So this is at that level of Anuyoga. So it sounds incredible to us. It's not credible. This is unbelievable. You can't believe that this is true. But when we engage in our practices, we engage in meditation, and we have those moments of, maybe we can call it experience, maybe we can call it epiphany or whatever, but that quickly you can have that transformative experience. And the more that you have that, the more you go back and practice it, the deeper that becomes, the broader it becomes, the more stable it becomes in our being, and the more spacious we become, the more we take on the qualities of being an enlightened being. An enlightened being doesn't need to do a lot of things. An enlightened being becomes very simple. Doesn't need to do a lot of things. And you've heard in our culture, there's been many folk references, to this kind of being, the fool on the hill, and many people would say, well, why do you want to be the fool on the hill? But then there's other people who would say, I yearn to be the fool on the hill. This is where it's at. Because to not be the fool on the hill means to be swimming around this ocean of suffering, constantly being pulled around by our desires and ignorance and so on like that. Any questions? Everybody good with this? Okay. So as we get into this, Anuyoga, there's a lot of finer points of the meditation and so on, and there's no need for us to go into that now. Most of us are quite young enough where if you want to engage in this kind of cultivation, there's time for you to do that, and there will be great result for you to do that, and to whatever level you get, that when your time on this planet is over, when your humanness expires, then whatever that work that you took with you or that you have developed, kind of goes with you as part of the human experience for whatever incarnation there may be, that your spirit that you're becoming, that you're developing, becomes part of. So exactly the mechanics of that, we can guess, we can make theories about, we can conceptualize and so on, but it may be just something as simple as that our light just all comes together, coalesces together, because we've been developing this cultivation of our light and everything, and it just all becomes the same light, and it just becomes stronger and stronger. And that maybe it comes together in the form of what we might call a Buddha or something like that, or maybe a Bodhisattva or another human being who has great power and so on. And to think that maybe your life now, whoever you are, is the result of that happening before you were conceived, before you melted with your father's sperm and your mother's egg. And that spirit all came together, and that spirit had coalesced from many, many others at that time prior to that for you to be born like that. So that's an illustration. We shouldn't take it to be so literal, but it's an illustration. And to open ourselves up to dimensions that, we can just theorize upon, but we can also have experience with through our meditation. And those experiences are non-conceptual. We can't explain them when we come back. But we do have the qualities of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity, the bodhicitta. So we know that that's the path. We know that that's what it is. And it's not just Buddhism, but it's Christianity. They've got their way of explaining this. And Judaism, they've got their way of explaining it. Hinduism has their way of explaining it. Islam has their way of explaining it. Taoism has its way of explaining it. So all these different spiritual systems are trying to explain this. So we get to that point where we see all those as the same. They all become part of the same thing. So our conduct, we can recognize this through our conduct, our behavior, and our conduct becomes beyond adopting or abandoning in the recognition that all perceptions are but the display of this wisdom of great bliss. We don't know how we got there. It doesn't matter how we got here. We're just going to enjoy being here. Being a human being has great things about it. But within our being a human being is this display, this absolute nature. And we are the display of that. And we have a choice as to how we're going to display it. That's our responsibility. So part of Buddhism and any tradition like this gives you a code of ethics, morality, and behavior, and so on like that, as to how they would qualify or quantify, what that behavior is like. Okay. Any points about that? Questions? Michael?
Yeah, I would just like to note for myself, I just like to say it out loud that, this is a lot that we have on our plate. I mean, we have all of reality within our grasp. And I find it convenient and wonderful that our mind heart has room for it all. It's very special to be a part of that.
Indeed. Yes, thank you. Okay, does anybody need to take a short break? Stand up, get a drink of water, just stretch, whatever. I'm fine, I'll continue. Okay. All right, everybody seems to be staying put, so we'll keep
I
going.
think we're good.
Okay, good. Thank you.
As the second oldest person here, I can testify my bladder's good for another round.
All right, good. All right. So now we come to this final yana, this yana of the Atiyoga, the Atiyoga, and this is the path of self-liberation. Let me see here, just a moment. So this Atiyoga, just to give a conceptual mindfulness of what this represents, because there are words that speak to this, and this is the path of self-liberation, and this is often referred to as the Dzogchen in this tradition of Nyingma. It is called the Dzogchen, the great perfection. Chen means great, Zog means perfection, the great perfection. In other lineages of Buddhism, it would be called the Mahamudra, the great position, the great seal, of being a human being, the great perfection of being a human being. So, they're talking about the same thing, but the verbiage is a little bit different and the approach may be a little bit different, but the result is the same. And many of the great practitioners will study both. At this point, they will be studying both of these things. So this is a point when your teacher, your guru or gurus, at this point, may be talking very, very simply, very precisely with what we might call pith instructions. Pith, P-I-T-H. You've heard that. If you've read anything about Buddhism, you may have heard that. And it may be just a phrase, it may be a sentence, something very short, but just cuts right through whatever obscuration is remaining about some obscuration, that is blocking up your awareness of your true nature, your awakenedness, just something that's, so this pith instruction. So within this Atiyoga are these pith instructions, and you can sometimes hear these things, sometimes you can hear a 5-year-old kid say something that nobody else recognizes as being a pith instruction, but for you, it just cuts right through. So it can come in many different ways, from many different places, because the absolute nature is everywhere. And it's our realization, it's our recognition of that absolute nature. So it can manifest in any way, shape, or form. So this is the utmost yoga, the utmost yoga. There's the highest yoga. There was the following yoga, the Anuyoga, now the Atiyoga, the utmost yoga, the utmost union. They talk about in Buddhism, they talk about that there are these 10 bhumis of being a bodhisattva. Bodhisattva, if you remember, is a wholly enlightened being. And these great bodhisattvas are going around this spiral, and we're still down at the bottom trying to get onto the spiral, but they're on the spiral going up and so on. And there are these 10 bhumis, these 10 levels and so on. And they get to this very top level, this 10th level, and they speak about like this 11th level, which is the leap of faith, or the leap of wisdom, or the leap of whatever you want to call it. It can't really have a name, but it's that utmost yoga, it's that utmost union of letting all this behind, letting all that stuff behind and just becoming that Buddha, becoming that absolute nature that has no qualification to it, has no duality to it, has no relativity to it, has no emptiness to it. It's beyond the word is. It's beyond the word one. It's beyond any conceptualization. So the question becomes now, if we say that this is the path of self-realization, now, is this liberation of the self liberating? Or is it the liberation of the self? You understand the difference between that? Are we identifying as a self? And do we think that as a self that we can self-liberate, that we can liberate ourselves to become Buddha? Or is it that we are liberating ourselves from being a self? So we say in Buddhism that there are two ways of attaining enlightenment. There's two components to it. There's the absolute and there's the relative or the phenomenal. In the phenomenal, I said about 20 minutes ago, I said in the phenomenal is the multiplicity. There's all this phenomenal appearance, all this stuff and everything. And we have to liberate ourselves from any attachment to that. Liberation from the phenomenal, from the self of self-phenomenal, or the phenomenal self, the multiplicity. There's that. That we've already done. To get to this spot of Atiyoga, we would have already done that. Now comes this liberation of the self, of being a human being. Whatever your name is, whatever you think of yourself, whatever vestige of being a human being that's left, whatever purpose you think you have to rationalize your existence, now has to be liberated. So this is the Atiyoga. This is a way of looking at it, to be able to understand it. Of course, it's more subtle than that. And to be able to get to that point takes a great deal of work of purification. But this is, to be able to understand this pathway is, to me, is very important. I couldn't have gotten to where I am without having some idea of what this is, of having read about these things or heard about these things, or even contemplated these things, or maybe even had a glimpse of these things. And maybe there was a glimpse before there was an explanation. So I've talked many times about top-down experience and bottom-up experience. Top-down experience is when there is no preparation for this. You're just put into that situation, if you will. When we die and we release that life force, there is this top-down now. But as we are still human and we're working to understand this, it's from the bottom up. So we can have that top down. We may have the karma. We may have a cause and condition in our life that puts us in that top-down situation, that awareness, and we may be blown away by it, for lack of a better word, but yet there's that experience that then becomes a motivational experience for the rest of our lives. We're trying to understand what that experience was, the love that came from that, the compassion that came from that, the joy that came from that, the equanimity. That was bodhicitta. All of a sudden, it exposed itself, or I became naked enough to be able to recognize it. On the other hand, we're moving up from the bottom up to be able to build a cultivation of these things. And that's where we were talking a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the 8 great bodhisattvas, and as a gardener, developing our life to be able to have that fruition of the seed of enlightenment. So in this Atiyoga, there's 2 important points that I would like to make. And one is that there is a cutting through. And then there is a crossing over. So the cutting through is, it's a simile. It's like, you cut through the veil that is separating you from reality or truth, whatever you want to call it. You cut through it. And now it's open. The door is open. There's no blockage, but you're still on this side. So then you got to cross over. So that's what we're preparing ourselves for. So the conduct, the result of that, and being able to recognize, well, have I been successful with that? Did I really have a vision of that? Did I really have an experience of that through my practice, through my meditations? And you can see that, are you free of hope and fear? Hope and fear. We use the word hope so much. I hope we're going to do this. I hope we're going to do that and everything. It's, is it a figure of speech, or are you really hoping? I'm hoping this is going to happen. Wow, I spent a lot of time hoping. And then fear. Fears can be more subtle. We don't want to face the fear. We kind of suppress it. But is that moving us in certain directions, or moving us away from certain directions that we're fearful of, that we don't, and we don't have the courage for? This crossing over. We may be able to cut through, but do we have the courage now to cross over? So we develop that, but here in the conduct of being successful, we're able to do that. And we can see that there's no hope and there's no fear. And there's no adopting or abandoning. There's no need for us to be able to hold on to these things and say, oh, I need to do that, or to say, oh, I'm not going to do that. So no adopting or abandoning. In other words, you're free to be able to do virtually anything that you want. However, your purity is assuring, or is guiding, or is now you are the embodiment of that purity. So there's no choice anymore. You just are that purity. You just are that. Because all that appears manifests as the display of reality. And that's what Michael just said a few minutes ago. We're looking at reality. You know, it's two sides of the same hand. In this life, we are dualistic beings, you know, and we're looking at life as living beings. And we have hope and fear of what's on the other side when we cross over to go to the afterlife, whatever you might want to call it, and so on. But the reality of it is they're both the same. It's the same thing. It's just, you know, whether you can say it's one reality, I think that just makes a conceptual statement out of it. So we practice doing this over and over and over again, of crossing over, of cutting through and crossing over. And these are what the meditation practices are all about. If we're really doing them earnestly, we're doing them properly, with the right mindfulness, with the right practice, and developing, you know, the awareness that comes out of that, the mindfulness that comes out of that. And every meditation becomes a rebirth because we cross over from, we're leaving things behind. So it's like maybe whatever expectation you might have had coming into this meeting tonight. You know, did you have an expectation that, wow, I've been sitting through the first, you know, 7 classes of this, and every one of these has been a mind blower. I've been hearing things that I never ever thought were possible or whatever. What's going to be tonight? So now there's something new. So whatever expectation was there before now has been shattered, and now there's another sense of what reality is. So whether it's a teaching, whether it's a reading, whether it's a contemplation or a meditation, all those are experiences for death and rebirth. And by looking at them in those contexts, in that context, with that kind of wording and so on like that, there's a freedom that comes out of that. And if we remember, at the very beginning, we talked about the four noble truths, the 4 truths. Suffering, all beings have suffering. The suffering is because of attachment or aversion, because of emotions. The truth of the cessation that we renounce. How do we rid ourselves of the suffering? By just cutting ourselves off from those causes of those hatreds, of those attachments and so on. But how do we do that? We do that through the causes of the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path is, the first of the Eightfold Path is to have the right view. And the right view is freedom. That we all want freedom. All beings want freedom. All beings need to be free. So all this is for practice for freedom, of letting go and being our true nature, being that absolute nature that is unconceptual, non-conceptual. So we talk about, there's a rainbow body. You may have heard the expression of a rainbow body. And the result of this is that rainbow body. You know, the body that is like looking up at the sky and seeing a rainbow. It's clear and distinct, but meanwhile, if you were close enough to it, you could just put your hand right through it. It's just a matter of a point of view. So when we recognize all this humanness as illusory rainbow body, then we are liberated. And we don't even think of it in those terms. There are no thoughts to think of it. It's just peaceful quietude. And from time to time, we may get interrupted. And we deal with the interruption and get right back to the quietude. So that's it. What do you think? Ryan, what do you think?
I was wondering if all the yanas are separate or if they're part of one another, or like as you were describing the Vajrayana and Tantrayana, I was wondering if those are part, like if those are done with the intention to benefit all sentient beings, or if they're done with the intention to like if they're part of the Mahayana, or if they're more like to develop personal wisdom, or I don't know, that personal like oneness or something like that.
Well, they're each levels, and you know, one may be, you know, considered to have a ceiling to it, and then you crash through that ceiling, and now you're at the floor of the next level with another ceiling. So they're levels, they're stages, and they have different characteristics at each stage and everything. The goal is the same on any one of the levels, but the way in which they get to the commitment that may be required for each one may be different, and so on. But they all are leading us. They are all vehicles. The yanas are vehicles, and they are all taking us from where we are now to Buddhahood. So, you know, I know you haven't been with us all this time, you know, but it's all recorded. If you have time and you want to listen to it, if you want to, there's many books written about this, you know, but this series of classes was aimed more at the people who had been with us in Buddhism 101 for quite a long time, and were looking for something that was a little bit more advanced. So we said, okay, let's take this next session and look at the yanas. And so that's why we went down this path of doing that. So we're going to get back to the basics next time, but so anyway, so it's like here's the book of Buddhism, here's the book of Dharma, and we were looking at the table of contents and exploring a little bit.
Thank you. That's a good explanation. And I've been enjoying watching kind of after you guys are done and you post it, especially the last, I think, 3 or 4 classes. But you know, what you were saying a second ago about things interrupting you and then finding a moment of quiet rings true pretty well for me. So thank you for that explanation. Appreciate
You're
that.
welcome. And thank goodness and may you have a long life in order to be able to cultivate mindfulness of all of this.
Yeah, I have a lot of benefactors of patience around here.
So Brendan, what did you think of this?
I was really focused tonight on the four absorptions, especially the first one, giving up attachments.
Okay.
And as you went through them, we get to the point like number 6, consciousness is limitless, or number 7, nothing, whatever, and how amazing it would be to reach those. But I think that the overwhelming majority of humanity doesn't get past number 1. And
True.
and those of us that know, that have even heard of the 4 absorptions or the 8 meditative concentrations, we probably can't. I mean, I was thinking it's hard for number 1's really hard for me because I have attachments to fear as to, what would happen if I lost my job, what would happen to my house and my kids, and I have attachments to, there are people. There's a couple people in my life I really don't like very much, and I know that's not good at me. I know that's not healthy. That's not getting me on the path that I need to be on, but it's something I continue to work on. And so that's what I was focused on tonight.
Well, it's good, and that's wise that you recognize that, that difference there. And I've often said there's a lot of people I don't like, but I love them all.
Yes. Yeah, I thank you for that. And I'll just close my comments by saying that many things have attracted me to Buddhism, but one of them has been on this focus on kindness, and it's not really fair to say, well, I'll be kind only to those that I like, or I want kindness for myself, but not for the others. So
Right. Well, that's indeed true. So let me ask you this, because you kind of came in, in the midst of this, and has this, how does this land on you in terms of, does it turn you on? Does it turn you off? What do you think about this? Generally?
Anything that you mentioned about the absorption, so anything that's mind blowing or mind expanding is something that I am very interested in and attracted to. So I've learned a lot. I've heard of chakras. Today was the first time that it was ever explained to me. And so one thing I'm dealing with, I have this very Western, rational, analytical mind, and I'm constantly saying to myself, you don't know everything, Brendan. Trust Lance. He's experienced this in meditation, and you need to just, you need to be more accepting, because there's a lot out there that you don't get with your rational mind. And so that's how that's landing on.
Does getting this introduction like this, does it frustrate you, or does it excite you?
Oh no, it doesn't frustrate me at all. It excites me. There's music from the 60s about, like, Ride Captain Ride and these guys, and that really, I don't know, that's a stupid example, but
No, it's not. We grew up with that. that was our Bible.
yeah. And so I really I like anything that brings me closer to that spirituality.
Yeah.
And so yes, I am learning a lot. It's the four noble truths are what really first interested me and got me on the path. And I've seen I'm in my late 40s now versus, I think, of who I was in my 20s, very ego driven, and who I was dating and what job I had and money. And now as I get much older, I realize that that stuff is completely nonsensical. And that's one of the things that I think that's a major truth that I see that Buddhism understands.
Very good. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your frankness. All right, Lee, how about you? What do you, how's this landing on you?
I haven't had a chance to go back and listen to the first 4 classes yet, but I'm slowly doing it. I would say that learning about the 9 yanas, what I've learned so far, has really helped me to gauge some of my own experiences and things that I've get lost, and in terms of obscurations, and it's helped me figure out a little bit better in terms of Buddhism, because Buddhism is new to me in this life anyway. um, a little bit better where I am on the path, I think. And so it's been very illuminating, and the elucidation of all of these points has been so clarifying for me. So I find it very, I find that even just listening to you talk about it helps me be more mindful and aware of my thoughts and the people around me. What other people's comments are helps me be mindful of all of us as a sangha. And there's so much I could say, but I have learned a great deal in the last month, and I'm looking forward to learning more.
Very good. Thank you very much. We're glad you're here, and Brendan and Ryan, everybody. And B, Anna B, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
So would you like to comment?
I feel like as you've been explaining all of the paths, I've been finding things that I can sort of apply or have been applicable in my life. But when I try to place myself like on the path, it's always like at the beginning, you know? So there's a lot of it that's making sense. But I don't feel like I'm all the way conceptually there yet.
So does this context of the 9 yanas, I mean, and I know you've only been, here with us for the past 4 weeks or something like that. I mean, has that helped you in any way, or does it make you want to look for more, or is it just blowing you away and saying, oh, I'd rather not be involved with this?
I definitely am interested in learning more. I think I don't know if the 9 yanas, is that meant to be linear?
1
Is it a
year?
linear path? Am I, do you go step 1, step 2, step 3?
To some degree it is linear, but that doesn't mean that there's not some moving back and forth between them, because you may learn something in a more advanced path and then double back to something that came earlier, and it kind of helps clarify that which you learned earlier. So, and I think there's that. And I also think that there's something to say, well, I'm certainly not ready for the Atiyoga path, but it gives me incentive to work harder at whatever level I happen to be at, so that I'll be more prepared to get to the Atiyoga level.
How does one go about identifying which level they are at?
Through the practices, and not to be, and I think fundamentally, we don't need to be attached to where we are on these things. That's one of the things that we're letting go of, is our ego. Our ego wants to know where we are and who we are, and am I better than this or better than that? We're all different. We're all going to be at our own levels and so on, and to accept it in those simple terms.
That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thomas, how about you?
Yeah, well, what you just said really resonates with me.
Oh, Tommy's with you. Oh, I had no idea. Okay. Tommy, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I thought you called on me.
Well, I'm more than happy to hear what you have to say. I didn't realize you were there.
Yeah, as like learning about deity yoga and things like that, you learn that you should be doing these in a certain state of meditation, and then learning more about the states and progression within meditation. Sort of it gives you somewhat of a path to go, because if you encounter something that you realize that you don't have experience in, or you don't have the prerequisites, sometimes it just says the prerequisites, which is very helpful for a practice. That, and the Heart Sutra, and Garchen Rinpoche did a teaching on the Heart Sutra, has been really helping me, and the mantra for that is a reminder to do basic practice, just like generating bodhicitta in daily life. I have a problem with sort of dissociating a lot and not being present, and it's really, really helped me with that.
Well, good. That's really good. If you're doing that practice and reciting the Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Bodhisoha, that's really good.
Ayada.
Yeah, very good. Well, good. I'm glad that you've been with us and have brought B into our mix as well. Thank you. So back to my good friend Tom. So Tom, how's this landed on you? What do you think of this in terms of yourself, and what do you think of this in terms of the 101 Sangha in general?
Well, I mean, I'm very humbled by these teachings. Thank you so much, Lance. Really, there's always something new I learn, something that that stirs me inside. That you know, you are a great teacher, or a really good teacher. You know, and keeps us motivated and focused. And I think you're doing a wonderful job with the 101 group. You know, and the path that you chose for us is you know, a path that a person with wisdom would pick. You know, so it's very helpful. It's like I said, it's humbling, but we are very fortunate to have this. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Half of it's not true, but thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
your teaching us.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Lance.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Lance.
Oh, thank you. I want to come back to Michael, though, my good friend Michael, and who is quite a student of meditation himself. And I'd like to hear his comments about, you know, what this means to him, and any light that you wish to say it. But, you know, Michael's very articulate in the process of meditation. And what do you think about this that way, Michael?
First, I'd like to reflect Thomas's gratitude, or amplify that for all of the support that you provide for everybody's awakening, including us beings on this Zoom vehicle. Yeah, it's
The Zoom Yana?
yeah, it's a gift. It's a gift, and the classes in this cycle were, for me, they were a very, very nice and gentle layering of sort of reminiscences and rememberings of things that I've heard before, and you're playing my tune, you know. My heart is open to your teachings, and the way you've elected to move from one layer to another sort of seamlessly and with such great guidance, I think has been marvelous benefit for all of us here.
Well, thank you. I wasn't fishing for any compliments, but thank you.
Yeah, the yanas are it's an amazing concept, or set of concepts, or non-concept. And you know, you're creating a container where the folks here can imagine, just for a second, being able to hold all that in their being. And that's really close to getting a glimpse of our Buddha nature. So that's what you've given me.
Well, thank you. The Zoom has given us a great opportunity to meet people who might otherwise not be able to come to the center or whatever, but it would be wonderful to be able to be together at the center. We're making a real effort to do these Saturday practices. So if you can come, and there's things that we have printed and so on that I would like to distribute to people, but through the mail and everything, it gets a little bit confusing for me and so on. So, but there's things that, I think you would benefit from having, and that means, making yourself available in person, so if we can do some things where we can be together, I think there's some enrichment with that as well. So I hope that we can do that in the coming weeks. The idea was it's good to be able to do this academic stuff, these discussions, these lectures, whatever, over Zoom. We've learned that doesn't have to be an impediment in any way. But when it comes to practice, we need to be together. There's a big difference in practicing in the same room together and so on. So I hope that you all have the ability to join us for these things, and it's designed for your benefit, to be able to do this. And I look at everybody, I think we look at each other, and we're thinking, well, who are we going to be in next year? Who are we going to be in 5 years from now? Who are we going to be in 20 years from now? And I'm looking at the future of Buddhism, American Buddhism, or however you wish to look at it. And what we've tried to bring to this is a certain relevance to our culture. And to say, okay, we wouldn't be here if we didn't have some good karma to have brought us here. And there's some understandings that maybe we already do have, but maybe we haven't been able to articulate. But hearing these things in Western terms, with a Western mind being able to, give their impressions on it and so on, and the dialogue that we've had, the discussions we've had, really strengthens that. And so I think it's really good. And I think that, where it's going to be in 20 years from now is going to be because you guys have picked up the baton, so to speak, and are carrying on. And one of the hallmarks of being a bodhisattva is being a teacher. Is whatever level you have experienced this, to be able to share that with other beings is part of the bodhisattva way. We're all not going to be at the Buddha level. We're all not going to be at the Shenrezig level, et cetera, et cetera. But it is going to mean something to us as a human being, and as someone who has achieved a level of mindfulness, of awareness, and that has value, and that needs to be shared. And that's my point. So whether it's to your children or to friends or to coming to the Sangha, coming to the temple and sharing it with seeming strangers who are yet to be good friends, that's part of the experience. And that's what I hope that we can do, because this is how we make change in the world. We're not, going to plug everybody in and everybody's going to start thinking wonderful thoughts or give up bad thoughts or anything like that. It's a slow process, and it's by being present and by being the embodiment of these things. So I'm looking at the future of Buddhism. So I hope it all, and I use that word hope again. I'm sure, I wish that it is going to manifest. So thank you all very much. It's been my pleasure to be able to do this. I look forward to it every week, and I think of each and every person as we're preparing these. I'm thinking of what it is that you have said before, and what it is that maybe you might resonate with you as we're preparing this with you in mind. So that's each and every one of you. So thank you very much.
Lance, when will you next be at the center for the
Saturday?
This Saturday.
This Saturday, and for the next 3 Saturdays, we're making a special effort to come down and do deity yoga practice. And Hatley was there, and Tom. Well, Tom came in late, but we had several people there, and it would be great to have everybody there. And it's the kind of thing I know, and those of us who have been there know that it's going to make a difference. If you come, it's going to make a difference, a good difference.
I'll plan to be there. 2 p.m. is it?
We're going to do it at 2, but we're also going to start at 10.
Okay.
So we're going to do deity yoga at 10 o'clock, and then we're going to repeat it at 2 o'clock. So these next 3 weeks, we're making, like I said, this special effort to really talk about and experience practice. So it doesn't come casually. It comes from making commitment.
Thank you, Lance. I appreciate you very much, and our Sangha as well.
Thank you so much. All right, so now it's time to do our dedication. So if we can get our prayer books, and we will recite page 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. We'll go through and complete the dedication. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of Tibetan in here. I'm going to repeat a couple things in Tibetan. So follow along. I'm staying with the book so you can follow it. And please try and make an effort to recite along with us. Through practice is how we get to do these things. So we start on page 18, the lineage dedication prayer. Dorje Chang, Talopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dharma Lord Gampopa, Pagma Drupa, and Lord Drikumpa. Please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessing of all the Kagyu Lamas. By this virtue, may I achieve the all-knowing state, and may all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind. Where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. In Tibetan 3 times. Changshub Samcho Grimposhe Ma ke Panam ke Gurchi ke Panam pa me pa yang Gone Gondu Pelwasho Shangshub Samcho Grimposhe Ma ke Panam ke Gurchi ke Panam pa me pa yang Gone Gondu Pelwasho. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings. By the blessing of the Buddhas who attained the 3 kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging Dharma as such, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, may the merit I share bear fruit. By the virtues collected in the 3 times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Drikumpa Ratnashri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Tibet at the top of the page. Daktang korde tam shegi, dusam dusad padang, yo pege wasawedi, Dak Den Sem Chen Tam She Nor Du La Na Me Pa Yang Dag Pa Zog Pe Zhang Zhu Bren Po She To Pa Jur Chi She Ja, sorry. She La Kun Zi Kun Gen So Ki Je Tendrel Ne La Wang Zhu Dri Kung Pa Rin San Pa Gi Ten Pa Si Te Bar Se Dru To Sam Gong Pe Zen Gyor Chi She La Kun Ji Kun Gen So Ki Je Tendrel Ne La Wang Zhu Dri Kung Pa Rin Chen Pa Gi Ten Pa Si Te Bar Se Dru To Sam Gong Pe Zin Gyor Chi She La Kun Ji Kun Gen So Ki Je Tendrel Ne La Wang Zhu Dri Kung Pa Rin Shan Pa Gi Ten Pa Si Te Bar Se Dru To Sam Gong Pe Zen Gyor Chi. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root, and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams, assemblies of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, yogins, yoginis, and dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate root of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Mars, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment, precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you all very much. Thursday night, we do Medicine Buddha, and we'll be at the center on Saturday. And next Monday, we'll begin a new cycle by the story of Shakyamuni Buddha. So thank you all.
Thank you so
Not
much.
all.
Thank you, Lance. Good night.
Good night.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Thank
Lance.
you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Hey, Ryan, enjoy your kids, man. This is the best age.
Pretty soon
They
they
get
start
older.
asking, pretty soon they start asking for money.
When you get older, they want nothing to do with you.
Thank you for that reminder. Bye.
Bye, Davey. Where's Daniel?
He's where David's supposed to be, in bed.
Okay. All right. Good
Bye,
night.
everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome. Good night.
Good night.
Not everyone. Good night.
Thank you, Brendan. All right. Thank you, Tom.
Good night.
See y'all soon.
Hey, thanks again, Lance. Appreciate it. Huh?
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for
no
all the
problem.
nice things you say, but I
Well,
guess
it's all true, man. It's
they're
all
not
true.
true.
It's all true. You know it, man. You do a great job, really.
All
Thanks again.
right. I'll see you soon.
Yeah. Good night.
All right. Cheers. Bye-bye.